when it comes to content, what do you see that performs the best if we're talking about getting the most out of your site?
We have to balance the content for robots and the content for humans,
Can't
right?
be too much on one of those.
If real people are coming and reading it,
Yeah.
and it doesn't make sense to a person,
Yeah.
and eventually, Google sees that, hey, there's not really authentic traffic here, and it's kind of built on a faulty foundation.
Welcome to the Neon Buzz, where we offer marketing advice for oral, aesthetic, and other elective healthcare professionals. Sit back and relax while we share our digital marketing secrets to help you grow your practice.
Welcome back to the Neon Buzz. I am joined today by our VP of Strategy, Andy Newton. We're going to have a really good conversation about orthodontic websites, what you need to have on your website in order to be successful. Andy has launched over 700 websites. Is that right?
Yeah.
Okay,
yeah.
That's a lot. I feel like we're going to have a lot to talk about today.
It's wild.
Yeah. So we're going to talk about the effectiveness and some strategies behind a good website. So can you tell me a little bit more about your background? I find it super interesting because you went from working in music, higher education to being a vice president of a digital marketing agency. So how did we get here?
Yeah, it really feels like I've lived two lives.
Yeah.
So starting in higher ed, teaching was really fun. Definitely had a passion for music. Eventually, I knew it was time to just change streams and look for the new adventure.
Yeah.
I've always loved the internet.
Yeah.
And, writing as well. So, I was focused on songwriting. And so moving towards, okay, how can I apply that to web writing and web strategy? So kind of the construction, always, kind of had a background in the arts. And so, love the design aspect and, big fan. So, I got a few freelance jobs and tried to cut my teeth and learn a lot of mistakes.
Yes.
Like you do.
Yeah. Hearing you talk about the connection between the music and writing, it makes sense when I hear it from you. I don't think I could have pieced that together otherwise, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
And you've been doing it now for 10 years, 7 of those at Neon Canvas.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
Yep.
So when you first started to get into digital marketing, what did that look like for you?
Yeah.
Freelancing, and then how did it evolve?
Yep. So freelance and graduated to, a small in-house, all-in-one marketer for a minute. Again, learning from your failures than your successes, which is great. You can't be afraid to fail. And then moving on to the full agency background, learned, a ton from, my colleagues and peers.
Yeah.
And just trying to voraciously gobble up everything I can, just annoying people by just asking questions and not being afraid of.
Best way to learn.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And in your role right before you came to Neon Canvas, you were doing a lot of this research and then apply method. Pretty much, it sounds like we were talking before this episode. A lot of it was, you didn't act unless you had the research, and you kind of had a lab at one point maybe that you worked with, where you were doing this research, and that's a big part of marketing. Working on real results and data and those sorts of things. Now in your role as VP of Strategy, kind of overseeing the website process, what are some of the research methods you've taken and, kind of used today for websites? Yeah.
So, none of it is really new, even though we're talking about digital marketing, which is newer over the past 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
But, things like competitor analyses, SWOT comparisons. But the most important is, user interviews and trying to figure out what real people are looking for. Your marketing is talking to one type of person, two types of people, and, what do they want to hear and how do they want to hear it? And how can you match your message and the story you're telling to what somebody's looking for?
And when we do a user interview, you're sitting down with somebody, they're kind of using the website, and then you ask them questions. That's what the user interview looks like, right?
Yeah, it could be. It definitely could be that. Sometimes it's before you even hit that part at all, before you even make the website. So, every website has or should have, business goal, or business goals, and then user goal or goals, right? So in terms of orthodontic marketing, we have our patient leads. So maybe that's, mom or dad or, an adult patient. They're using the website, the kid's not using the website, which, maybe seems obvious, but
those are things that it's your job to think about.
it's good to think about.
Yes.
And
That
that's
makes
okay.
a lot of sense. Before we get into how to make the most out of your website, I think we have to go back a little bit to the purpose of a website in the first place. So, and I think this is something that people still get wrong in 2025 when we talk about websites. So can you tell me a little bit more about the purpose that people should be going for?
Yeah, for sure. So different websites have different goals, right?
Okay.
So in terms of marketing websites, they came along essentially as like an online business card. And some companies still rely on that, and that's appropriate for some companies. In terms of orthodontic marketing websites, we're looking to try to gather new patient leads, right? Try to get them to call the office, ultimately to talk them into becoming patients. So orthodontic marketing website goals, first of all, do you even exist online, right? So the business goal is, hey, I want to make sure people know I exist and what I do, and make sure the visitor has enough information to make an informed decision to choose me, right? And then from the user goal, it's, hey, does this website show up when I'm looking for an orthodontic practice? And number two, is it really easy to get in touch with them? Do I feel like I can trust them? Do I feel like it's a good place for me or my family? And ultimately answering that question of, is this going to give me a happy ending to my story that I'm thinking?
So it sounds like after the whole, I exist online, I have a business card, the next step to take would be to kind of use your website as like an automated lead generation source. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So it's your online salesperson, right?
Yeah.
Your treatment coordinator, your doctor. So how do you pull people in? If you're going to spend the money, do it right. It's usually not the cheapest thing in the world, right? But that's okay, because you have to spend money to make money. So you're putting in, a seed and watching it grow into a harvest. So automated lead generation. Wouldn't it be cool if you're making money while you sleep, essentially, is the old adage. So how can we make that work for you?
And I want to talk a little bit later about how we can actually track that, because that is also super interesting and a huge perk of digital marketing versus, if you were going to have a billboard or a business card where you can't track it. So when we do get a website, new client comes on, we inherit this website, we're going to make them a new one. Are there any common mistakes that you see people consistently make on their old sites?
Yeah, definitely. So, if we're imagining you're on a date, and if you talk the entire time, about yourself, that's a faux pas, right? So it's a conversation. So people, companies that put, everything above, we call it above the fold of the website, it's just, drinking from the fire hose, and they feel like we need to have everything at the top because it's all important. But, if everything is important, then nothing is important, right?
Love that.
You have to make some priorities at some point, right? So if the goal is, hey, I want to make sure I'm heard through the noise of my competitors, don't make more noise on your website. So it's really hard for somebody just to even, get what they're looking for.
Yeah, that makes sense. How do you help doctors avoid doing that when they come to us and we're making their new site? What kind of processes do you go through?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of times we know their goal and we know the goal of, their website visitors. I think it's helpful to talk to them and ask questions and try to find out the background of what they're thinking, what makes them different.
Sounds like a very collaborative experience. I mean, it has to be.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially on maybe websites that we don't work in every day, it can be really helpful to do lots of different kinds of brainstorming activities, right? And involve the client and
some more research.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yep.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I want to switch gears a little bit into content and design, this more user experience conversation. When it comes to content, what do you see that performs the best if we're talking about getting the most out of your site?
We have to balance the content for robots and the content for humans,
Can't
right?
be too much on one of those.
Exactly right.
Let's just take a blog, for example. If you write a blog fully for SEO for the robots, like, yes, it might on paper look like, oh, you did that correctly for SEO, but actually Google, the robot, wants authenticity. They want human content that also hits their SEO mark. So you got to have both. I think that applies to more than just the blog.
That's exactly right, because, if real people are coming and reading it,
Yeah.
and it doesn't make 2 licks of sense to a person,
Yeah.
then, what are they even reading it for? And then eventually, Google sees that, hey, there's not really authentic traffic here. And, it might work for a flash in the pan to make the robots happy for a second. But, when the humans come in and it doesn't, it's kind of built on a faulty foundation.
When we talk about SEO a little bit, what is your perspective on sort of the best practices there, like the most important thing to be doing with SEO on the website?
Google ultimately wants to know that they can refer you as a brand to the people searching for you online, right?
Yeah.
So one way to do that is to show that you didn't just set it and forget it, the website, right?
Yeah.
Like you didn't just throw it up a few years ago and then it's just gathered dust, that it's still relevant, right? That it still pertains to real people. So one great way to do that is to freshen up content. So that may be updating and adding blogs. That could be making sure that, the interior pages of your website are up to date or, reflect your business practice.
So it's not just blogs too, which I think when we talk about the SEO and the content and conversation, blogs are obviously the first thing that come to mind, but even internal pages, that makes sense that you would need to freshen them up, show Google that you're still paying attention, you're still trying to give their users the best answer to their questions. Okay, perfect. From a design and user experience perspective, what is a frequent mistake you see on sites before we redo them?
Yeah, so kind of going back again to the date where the brand is just talking all about themselves, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, you're part of a story in that person's life. Where do you fit in? Are you just talking about your own self the whole time, or are you talking about how you can meet a need that they're looking for and give them the solution they want, right, for themselves or their kid? For being a parent, as a parent myself, I want to ultimately feel like I am a good parent because I helped my kid, with their health and self-esteem. Makes sense, right?
You kind of explained before that a website should kind of be like a river. Can you explain that analogy to me?
So websites are design is ultimately a service industry, right? So it differs from, an artistic expression in that it has a job to do, right? So we also know that human behavior doesn't change a whole lot. There are tons and tons and tons of data-based research articles behind this. So if you're thinking about users as like water that's flowing, how can you set up the best experience as like a riverbed so it can flow and help them find what they're looking for, right? Rather than throwing up a lot of rocks or trying to redirect something off course.
Yeah, you mentioned before this above the fold. Can you explain what above the fold means?
Yeah, definitely. So it's from, a newspaper. Remember those? So it comes from like the newspaper metaphor, right? So, when you land on a website, on your phone or on your computer, laptop, before you scroll down, they call that above the fold.
Okay. So in this river of information, we need to keep it concise in what's above the fold, and then the rest of it should flow like water to get where people need to go to find information, and also to get them where they need to go to click that lead form eventually.
Yeah.
That's the goal, right? Is that free consultation form or requesting an appointment.
Yeah, and that's huge because a lot of times websites don't have the ask, right? If you're selling something in person, that's how they tell you to close, right? So what's the final call to action, right? And so make sure you have that click or call, either someone filling out a form or giving your practice a call to seal the deal.
So when I first started working here and I was looking at all of our websites that were coming out, I noticed that something that we did was make the call to action button a different color, like a, third color that was, a little bit on the website, but it really made it stand out on that call to action button. I remember coming to you and I said, is this why the button's a different color? And you were like, yes. Can you explain to our listeners like what the reason is behind the button being a different color?
We want it to stick out, and no matter where you are on the website, that it can draw your attention, right? Again, it's just one of those psychological, data-based decisions that really can make a difference.
Can imagine that if we did like a heat map on a website.
Yeah.
I mean, that's where my eye went first, was because it's if the site is blue and the button is yellow, automatically I'm going to go there before I scroll below the fold. How can orthodontists measure if their website is successful or not? Because we can track things like how many times that call to action button is clicked. Is that a metric that we follow for success? What are some of them?
Yeah, of course, right? So, if you're spending a lot of money doing something, you want to know that it's worth it, right? And having some kind of return on investment. That's the coolest thing I think about digital in general. Versus writing, a book or paper that's published. You always have a second chance. You always have an opportunity to optimize or change, right? So, if something's not working the way that you thought or expected, then you get to make a change, right? So, with those results, have some KPIs in mind, some, key performance indicators, whether those are, calls that you can track that are coming from the website, or those forms like, hey, how many people are clicking the button or filling out the form? Is the form even working? Or are you asking, 1,100 questions that no one wants to fill out the whole thing, right?
Right. If I am only looking at page views when I'm looking at the success of my website, is that doing anything for me? Is that worth anything?
Hey, if that's all you have,
yeah,
great. But it'd be dumb to not make the juice worth the squeeze, right? And figure out, okay, who's coming to my website? What are they doing there? How long are they spending on the website? It can give you, answers that you're looking for. Like, hey, is this answering the questions that people want to see? Are they leaving or bouncing from the website? Or are they closing the deal, right? Are they calling? Are they filling out the form and emailing you?
I imagine page views are a little bit like if you had a store and you could track the number of people who came through the door. Like, it's great to know how much traffic, but if you don't know what they're buying or how much they're spending, there are better metrics out there, we would rather know what is being bought versus how many people are coming in the door. Is that?
Yeah, absolutely right. Tons of stores have had, like the little bells above, the door frame or the digital ones. So, it opens and you got foot traffic in there. But, how lame is it if you found out people are maybe doing a circuit in the store and then heading out and you're not looking at your numbers? Or maybe if you are, a bigger crime would be to just ignore that, right? And like, okay, this traffic isn't turning into sales.
Yeah.
Okay, it's your responsibility, marketing and stakeholder in the business to know how to marry those two things and how to make sure you're increasing your profit margin.
Yeah, it sounds like page views or this traffic metric is like half the story. And when you can put something with it, like a call to action button or, a call reel number, something like that, you can kind of complete the story and really see if all the effort that we're putting in is worth it.
Yeah.
Before we wrap up, I would love to talk about kind of the future of where websites are headed. I know that so much has changed even since 2020 and what we were doing on websites then. 5 years later, we're doing a lot of things differently. Where do you see websites going?
Absolutely. So, a lot of traffic, most of the traffic that we're seeing for our practices, people are using their phones. And you probably know this. I mean, as a listener, you're pulling up the information on your phone, which kind of goes back again to don't make everything important or nothing's important, right? Like the
even smaller screen.
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly right.
That makes a lot of sense. This like mobile first approach is very interesting to me. I'm also interested to hear your take on AI. I know in 2020, like for orthodontic websites, we were talking about doing more virtual consults and, maybe some AI chats that were not fantastic, but maybe they're getting better. Is that still something that you're seeing with AI on websites?
Yeah, there's a lot of cool opportunities, right? And so it's a big land grab right now for for lots of different companies. And so remembering that, hey, AI and large language models are a little bit different, right? AI has the opportunity to be smart and think for itself, and large language models are trained on information that you give to it. So it's only good as your input. I think there's a lot of cool opportunities for, chat concierges that I just haven't seen really kind of stick the landing, but there's opportunity there, right? You wouldn't currently, probably going back to the store analogy, trust a robot to give, free samples of little sausages to people.
Gosh, have you seen those Amazon stores? I went to one in the airport at Salt Lake City where you scanned your phone when you walked in, and then there's no cashier. You just walk out and you get billed for whatever you picked up. That is such a scary concept to me.
Yeah.
It freaked me out.
Yeah.
But it's AI being, involved in all sorts of things. If we're going to relate it back to the store analogy, that is one that freaked me out.
Yeah, that's rad. I've always wanted to go into one of those.
Yeah, I Salt Lake City Airport. You have to check it out.
Yeah, I mean, and like you brought up, the biggest thing that I'm hearing from you is your personal testimonial of user experience. I know I made that really formal, but you had feedback. It'd be smart if, the company making those stores would listen to their customers and continually tweak and optimize. And I love that they have a vision for the future. And the difference between the present and the future is, listening, paying attention, taking action.
And always wanting to learn more too. I know that you're always looking to see from industry experts, what other people are doing to kind of determine what we are going to do for our clients. What are some of those things? I know that you're going to some think tanks and reading.
Going back to the user data, there are a lot of really phenomenal companies doing tremendous work. Nielsen Norman Group, really comes to mind. Think tanks, institutes where they take huge swaths of data and distill it to prove, hey, certain designs will perform better for customer experiences than others.
I bet it has to be really cool for you too, working on 700 websites so far. As soon as you learn something new, to then try it on our clients' websites. So that has to be, from a researcher's perspective, really cool to be able to see the results actually work for our clients. So
yeah, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
I mean, that number is really gnarly, but it's great to compare it with the data again. And we have a lot of amazing tools that can distill information, like you were talking about heat maps earlier. We can see where people, are looking on the screen, without being Big Brother, being invasive. We can see, hey, what are people clicking on? Are the right things grabbing attention that we meant to? And if they are, great. If it sucks, we'll change it.
I really appreciate you sitting down with me today. It sounds like to get the most out of your orthodontic website, we have to have a clear purpose, understanding that this is a automated lead generation source. Kind of think about your website from that perspective. Can't be too robot, can't be too human. Got to have the perfect mix of both. And then this user-friendly design. And then, we're going to see where AI takes us. It sounds like there's lots to learn. So if you are wanting to learn more, you can check out our blog at neoncanvas.com. Follow us on socials. We're always sharing more information about websites, SEO, social, all the things. So you'll have to tune back in. Thanks for joining us, Andy.
Thanks, Katie.